we have a cow who we just found out has a disease that's going to kill her. So here I was scrambling to figure out what are we going to do. And I reached out to my community that we've built over these last few years doing this show of veteran butchers, at home, professional, every which direction I could find someone to pick up the phone. And I've been picking brains. And tonight is one of those conversations. I reached out to Jamie. You may remember Jamie. Back in the winter, me and Jamie talked, and we did a great episode together where Jamie was encouraging all those who are part of the Homesteady community to learn to butcher yourself. And Jamie really encouraged starting on chickens and diving into pigs. And he definitely discouraged doing a beef because he said it was probably something you're never going to have to do, and you're better off learning something you could actually do at home. Well, for the rare bunch of us out there who have a beef to butcher, Jamie knows plenty about how to do this. Tonight, he's going to answer my thousands of questions: how to set up a butcher facility at your homestead, what do you need, what is nice to have, what is a must-have. So I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Thank you so much for joining me tonight and helping me through this, Jamie.
No, my pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
So Jamie, we literally are at ground zero on our homestead when it comes to a butcher facility. I shouldn't say zero. I mean, we have a tractor out there that I can lift a dead animal with, and I have a couple knives. Where does somebody start if they're thinking about butchering on their homestead? Where do you even start? What are the bare necessities?
I actually put a list together of wants and needs, and I don't know if that'll kind of separate, but like the absolute must-haves is the bigger column. But that's not to be like, I don't want to overwhelm you with the things that I would view as the things that you absolutely should have when you get going on this. It is really kind of job specific. So in your case, you're going to be dealing with a whole head of beef. I have no idea how big it's going to dress out, but I would wager that it's probably going to be somewhere in that like 600 to 1,000 pounds in that neighborhood. You don't really see too much on either side of that, really, unless you're dealing with some really young grass-fed animals that might dress out a little bit smaller. But that tends to be a pretty safe variance. Like for me, I'm pretty bare bones in my operation. In fact, I joke that I can fit my butcher shop in my car, and I have. I've gone out to some people's properties and helped them process pigs, and I literally can carry everything that I need in a car, a small car, not a big car. So like the things that I look at first and immediate is 2 or 3 things. I'm looking at knives, which you already have, and a saw. I think those are the most important pieces of equipment that I carry with me. So having those 2 pieces will get you, oh my goodness, 95% of the way through it. Everything else tends to be a bit of a luxury almost. So yeah, knives and saws, like you've already got the knives. The hand saw will enable you to get pretty much through the entire carcass, everything you need to do. Everything else after that becomes a matter of preference. So I think a lot of people out there would surely want to accrue some ground meat, because let's be honest, on a whole head of beef, you're going to accrue a lot of trim as you're trimming things to make them either look visually appealing, or at least even kind of service the home cook and get it into a spot where you want to put it in a pan or roast it in the oven or something. So you're going to accrue a fair amount of trim. So the grinder is always a nice piece of equipment to have. Outside of that, I just want to kind of resort back to my list here. Obviously a table to work on. That seems kind of like something that would go without saying. And then one of the things that I looked at was packaging. And I think that's kind of a key piece that might get overlooked. And it's not, something that will break the bank. Packaging can be probably any, kitchen supply store. Some butcher paper with some wax on it, which is what you're looking for. And then outside of that, you're just going to be cutting into sheets and wrapping up the meat as best as you can to eliminate the oxygen. And then you're going to be putting it in the fridge or freezer. So that's bare bones. I think those items alone would get you through the process. It might not be, as convenient as you see a lot of butcher shops operating, but those bare necessities will certainly get you through the job.
Awesome. I love your take on this, Jamie, because I think it's very approachable. It's very down to earth. Sure, we would like to have a, custom cut facility start to finish. And actually, after this situation, I'm realizing we had no plans on processing this cow. She's a dairy cow who we planned on milking for years to come. I'm realizing as a homesteader, you need to be prepared for this worst case scenario. So that's the bare bones basic, Jamie. Where do we go next if we want to, up our game a little bit? What do we have?
I think that, one of the things that we should probably touch upon as far as like even just a basic necessity when we're just dealing with the butchering is honestly a place to keep it chilled, or at least at a decent temperature, because not everybody has the luxury of just kind of like coordinating a kill that's going to happen in December or January if you happen to be in the cooler climates. Refrigeration is something that you have to consider too. So not everyone's going to install an 8x8 walk-in cooler in their garage just in case this happens, but coolers, I guess, are kind of good in a pinch, and some ice packs, or even an old freezer, a chest freezer, or something like that, something that you can have on hand, because I think that it can be a little bit overwhelming. And I'll borrow a phrase from another butcher friend of mine. It's the burden of abundance, because there's absolutely so much meat. There's so much that you'll be overwhelmed with it and just scratching your head like, where the heck am I going to put this? So that's something to seriously consider when you get into it, is just the amount that you're going to have to store, be that a chest freezer, a stand-up refrigerator, anything that you can get your hands on. Call your neighbors, call your friends, see who you can borrow some fridge space for, maybe trade them some meat. That's certainly one of those things that you should be cognizant of again when you're getting into this, is that how to keep it cold. So I would say that that's probably in one of those must-have categories, is refrigeration.
Now, in addition to just having the refrigeration to put the meat in when you've finished cutting, what do you do with the workspace? Here I am, it's the middle of June. It could only be worse if it were July, and we have to process this cow. And as of today, we don't have any walk-in cooling space or anything. Any tricks of the trade, any suggestions, any situations where it just won't work? What's your advice there, Jamie?
If you're lucky enough that maybe a cellar is at your disposal, that can probably get you by in a pinch for a bit of time, but you have to be very aware of the temperature and the air movement in the cellar as well. So I would just go knocking on people's doors if you don't have that ability within your own four walls to start borrowing some freezers, some fridge space, because I can't overstate it. You're gonna have a lot of meat when you get through this thing.
Oh yeah. Awesome advice there, Jamie. We actually do have a root cellar here on the property, an apple barn, which you mentioned using a cellar. We're very fortunate. This apple barn, my father-in-law built it to store apples in. It maintains a temperature of 55 degrees because it's underground. Now, it's underground down a staircase, so we can't get this whole hanging cow in one piece down there. But we feel once she's skinned and hopefully at least probably quartered, at that point I can carry down quarters, put them in the apple barn, and we're actually getting a cool bot set up in the room with an AC unit this week. So we should be able to actually have it age in there too. We got to see how the cool bot works out and all that stuff. But that's the game plan for us. But I love what you described, because it could work for almost anybody in almost any situation. And that's really the way we felt, especially more at the beginning of this problem. Like, oh no, what are we going to do? As time went on, we researched different ideas. We've developed more of a plan. But at first, we just didn't even know if it was even possible to do this. So you covered a lot of that, Jamie. That was really helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
So Jamie, what about we talked about the space being cool. Any additional advice on the actual space someone chooses to do this?
Always helpful to have running water. That can be as minimal as a garden hose, but just something to kind of like help maybe clear off the workspace, keep your hands clean, keep your knives clean, at least like rinsing them off as you go. Another kind of beneficial thing that I've found is even if it's a bucket with some water, and just a proper, parts per million bleach in there, something that can act as an active sanitizer. So yeah, I don't necessarily want to give people the idea that they have to have hazmat suits on and you have to be recording temperatures every hour. Like, you're not doing this as something that's going to be sold to the general public. So for your own personal consumption, but you still want to take the same precautions that you would if you were feeding it to the general public. So you do want to I always kind of keep sanitation as top of mind, just being as sanitary as possible, cleaning as I go, and the space itself as you guys are doing it. If you're in a cool box, like, if you have the luxury of being in a cellar, I think that's great. If you have the ability to put a table down there, even better, just to kind of keep the environment as cool as possible to even be performing the tasks in. I think you guys are off to a great start.
Now, you've been talking a lot about the food safety element of this, Jamie, and you have touched on making sure you have a safe workspace so you're not having wobbles and things. Any gear or advice as far as physical safety goes? Big project here, cutting a big animal, going to be at it all day, going to be other people there. Any gear to purchase or wear? Any advice on that?
So, yeah, it's not a clean job. So I'm a big fan of the rubber apron. And if that isn't available to you, then some sort of an apron just to kind of, protect you, at least from what you're going to be occurring on your clothes that you don't want to get ruined. So otherwise, I think a great investment is a chainmail glove, especially for the novice, somebody that's maybe doing it for the first few times. And not even, and that doesn't even need to be a badge of honor to take off the glove and say, I'm a butcher now, because, I see guys that have been doing it for a long, long time and they use the glove, right? It's a certain level of protection that they feel comfortable with. So the chainmail glove, and there's also a chainmail apron too that you can get too. Both are very affordable. And if you plan on doing it, more than once, more than twice, then I don't think that that's a bad investment. I think that it adds a certain level of confidence that you can gain from it, and protection is key, right? So, I mean, the chainmail gloves, they'll get them to come right up to your elbows. Some guys even have them that come up like almost like a sleeve, and then again, the chainmail apron. So, because you know what, truth be told, like, you don't know how long this is going to take. In a perfect world, you're going to start at 2:00 in the morning and be done by 6. But who can say? Guys could be out there for a while, and fatigue sets in. And then all of a sudden, you're not as sharp as you were at 2:00 in the morning. You kind of miss that whole night's sleep. So having those protective pieces of equipment may come in handy, especially at the latter parts of the day.
Yeah, that's something I already went and got myself. We have non-cut gloves here, not a chainmail one. I've used the fabric ones in the past, but now that you mentioned that, I might look into seeing something even a bit longer. But I went and already got the chainmail apron because I just figured, I read that in the beef butchering book, and I thought, as soon as I read it, I was like, well, now I can't not get that, because now I know it exists and I need to have that on.
Yeah, no, so I've worked at places that was mandatory gear, like you weren't allowed into the cutting space until you had your apron and your glove on. And those mesh gloves, the only reason I prefer the mesh glove over the fabric one, the non-cut gloves, is that they inevitably, after no amount of time, are just going to accumulate moisture in them.
Soaking wet. I knew you were going to say that. Yep.
Yeah. So I will go out and invest in, and they're not always the cheapest thing, is those not necessarily the disposable one-use gloves, but like a vinyl or a latex glove, something without powder that I can put on, and then I put the chainmail glove on, and I just find that provides a certain level of comfort. That chain on your hand, I don't know if I sound like I'm not a tough guy, but I just don't appreciate that. So I use the latex glove underneath.
I wouldn't worry about being a tough guy. You're a butcher, man. Come on. Any more equipment, Jamie? Upgrades? Anything else on the list there?
I think we've covered the must-haves. The luxury equipments are, the bandsaw, that would just be such a nice piece of equipment to have. Of course, not everyone's going to rush out, and I know they make affordable models. They're out there for sure, and I'm sure that your used Craigslist or Kijijis, whatever you have to find used equipment. I'm sure that you could probably pick one up if you needed one. Another one that I looked at was a sausage stuffer. So either beef or pork, lamb, anything that you want to make sausages with. You can get attachments for the grinder that work and they're passable. But I've become a big fan of the manual sausage stuffer. So if you plan on, getting into sausage or maybe learning to cure or just kind of upping your game a little bit, the sausage stuffer is a good investment. And then I'm just trying to look at what I got on my list here. One of the things that I like, and you guys are going to have access to it with the tractor, at least when you do the kill and the gut, is having the animal raised up, because especially when you're dealing with beef cattle, they're just really, really heavy. So having a rail system to allow you to work with gravity, that's pretty awesome. So if you were in a space that you could accommodate some sort of a rail system, is what it's called, where you just hang the hooks on it and then hang whatever piece you're working on. That, to me, again, because I'm a smaller guy, I love using gravity as my friend instead of trying to manipulate these like really large, cumbersome pieces around on a table. Having gravity as my friend to help in the process, that's always been a big thing. But again, these are all kind of like luxuries in the grand scheme of things. Everything that we've talked about, you can go from bare bones, from a couple of knives and a handsaw, right up to having a bandsaw and a huge grinder and all the other toys if you so see fit. So luxuries versus, I guess, wants versus needs.
That for me, we started, like I said, 10 years ago doing deer and self-taught. And it was literally an A-frame ladder that I hung the deer underneath with a tarp over it. And I had a sharp fillet knife and a little grinder attachment that you could put on a KitchenAid. And that took about 5 hours to do a whole deer with that little attachment. But it worked. That Jamie's saying, you can start with the basics and you can do a lot. Now, I wouldn't say go and do a whole beef with that because of the time element and what Jamie said, you got to think about that and how you're going to make sure everything stays cool at the right temperature. But then, those upgrades, the bandsaw, anything else anybody should be considering? Any, parting advice to the new butcher who's about to go out? Maybe they've tried a chicken before and they're about to do their first larger animal. Anything to think about?
Yeah, we talked about this in the last episode. I think it's just a matter of kind of getting educated on what exactly it is that you're going to be doing. Like, we can go out and make a list, XYZ that I need for my cut space. But if you really have no practical knowledge of what you're going to be doing, I think that's invaluable. And we talked about this the last time, where you can find those pieces of information, at least so that you can have some sort of visual cues as to what to look for, because not everybody can step up to a side of beef and go, there's the blade roast, and then there's my eye round, and there's my shanks and how thick I want them cut. That comes with years of kind of in the mix, getting experience with doing those things. So I really think that you should spend some time, and not you personally, you've been doing this for a while, but anybody who's looking to get out there and get into it is spend the time and watch the videos. Like, my wife watched me watch way too many videos a number of years ago, just obsessing over different techniques and seeing how people are doing things differently, because there's 1,000,001 different ways to do it. So maybe, your Uncle Jack did it one way and that was great and he's passed on those skills, but trust me, somebody else is doing it a different way that might be a little bit better for you. And maybe chances are that they've captured that on YouTube and you can watch and you can see, there's no shortage of videos now. We're in such a great time with the internet and videos online that you can see no shortage of people breaking down pigs, beef, lamb. Honestly, it's all there. So I think that's just a valuable resource. Just invest the time. Preferably when your wife or partner has gone to sleep and they don't want to be bothered by it, then kick back and enjoy and immerse yourself in it, because it's going to make your life so much easier when it actually comes time with meat on block for you to get through those pieces. At least you have some sort of reference point.
Any words of wisdom for me on that morning?
Yeah, I don't know. Eat a good breakfast.
There we go. That's a good one.
And you know what? I think that just to kind of ease maybe any anxieties that you have about the actual process, like, you've been doing deer, so you have knife skills. But I think one of the most interesting pieces of advice that I got was that the point of Butchery is that it's not about the butchery at all. It's about the cooking. So if you're getting it into shapes and sizes of things that you feel comfortable that you can cook, like I wouldn't worry too much about like, oh, you know, it doesn't look like those T-bones that I see in those photos in the grocery stores. Like, again, it's just like about the cooking at the end of it. You're going to cook and what you're comfortable cooking and how that's going to turn out inevitably on your plate.
Jamie, I've noticed since we last talked, you are busy with, I don't know if you had started it yet, but it's certainly gotten to be more prominent in your social media. You got a new business that you're running with here. Tell me a little bit about what you're up to nowadays.
So as luck would have it, I guess lucky for me, not so lucky for the rest of the globe, the pandemic started. And it was right exactly at about the time the pandemic started that I actually pulled the trigger on starting this meat shear program that I'm doing. So that has been keeping me extremely busy. Today I had 3 hogs come through, and I've got to process those in the next couple of days to get those out to my customers. But the meat shear program has begun, and it has been off the ground running. And I think it has a lot to do with our current situation and people's buying habits. But I'm offering something that you can't get at a lot of places. I'm working with small farmers that are doing pretty much strictly pasture-based animals, at least seasonal in our area. And yeah, people are just like pretty on board with it. And I've been pretty happy with the response. So yeah, that's been keeping me busy. I was working for a restaurant group, doing butchery for a restaurant group. And then like so many other places, especially in the restaurant world, that just dried up. They're just starting to explore opening up some patios right now with nicer weather. So once that kind of happened, and the restaurants, dried up, I just looked at my wife and I think, yeah, this is about the time to try this. So, and trying it, and I was kind of fortunate with some of the media and press that I got. And then, yeah, I'm busy, man. Like I'm just trying to keep up.
This has been huge help, Jamie. So much good advice here. I hope your new business continues to do well. It's something that I think so many people who want this lifestyle. I am very fortunate I get to raise all my family's meat, and pretty soon we'll be able to process all of it here on farm. We've been doing all our own processing for most of our animals. This is going to kind of close the circuit and allow us to do all of it. But for those of you out there who are not able to do everything yet meat-wise, taking advantage of something like what Jamie's doing. If you're local to Jamie, we'll have links below. Where else can people find you, Jamie, if they want to follow you on social media and that sort of thing?
Yeah, if you just search J. Waldron Butchers on both Facebook and Instagram, you'd find me. The website is jwaldronbutchers.com. Yeah, I'm a pretty easy guy to find. I don't know that there's too many other Jamie Waldrons that are butchers, but if you just search those, you'll find me.
Awesome. Jamie, this has been a huge help, and I feel a lot more confident going into this big butcher day. Having some good advice from a lot of good butchers, yourself included, on the list of guys I had to talk to before this happened. So thanks for taking the time, man. This was a big help to me.
Hey, man, honestly, like, good luck. I think you are, you're doing the homework. You're preparing. So I have all the confidence in the world in your abilities. So best of luck to you.
Thanks, Jamie. We'll be in touch. I'll send you some pictures of done steaks or something.
Awesome.
I can't say enough good things about that interview with Jamie. I went and took all his advice and I put together a homestead butcher shop. And if you watch this interview on YouTube, you got to see sneak peeks of it. We're going to be showing you how it all turned out in an upcoming video on the YouTube channel. So make sure you don't miss out on that. And if you loved this interview and you wished it was like twice as long with twice as much information, there is a version out there that exists that is like that. The extended version of this interview is available in the Pioneer library. You can learn in that interview a little bit more detail about the exact tools. Jamie gives the exact knives and saws that he uses, sizes, dimensions, everything.
For sure. So if I'm shopping for knives, like I use literally 2 different knives. We'll do all of the work that I need him to do.
Jamie also explained in detail how to lay out the butcher shop in the most efficient way so that you're not wasting time or energy while you're cutting throughout the day.
So like if you're fortunate enough to have the rail system, that's great, but you want that rail to be as close to your table as possible, because as you break the pieces, you just want to kind of seamlessly put them on the table.
You can watch or listen to that entire extended version of this episode when you become a Homesteady Pioneer. Click right there to become a Homesteady Pioneer. You'll instantly gain access to all the extended versions of our podcast, interviews, video versions, or audio versions you could download and listen to later. You also get access to classes, discounts on products you might be buying, and you can join us live for these interviews like the one we just had with Jamie. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. We have another episode coming out very soon about pasturing pigs. I know you're going to enjoy it, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, remember, the road is rocky. Make home steady.